Alone at night, a drive you'll never forget. The night felt like any other, a long journey nearing its end, leaving only the open road ahead. The digital clock on the dashboard blinked faintly, 11:47 p.m. I was heading home after spending the day visiting friends a couple of hours away. The drive had been smooth, even pleasant, as I sang along to tunes crackling through the car speakers. The road stretched on like an endless ribbon under the dark, moonless sky. For the first hour, I barely noticed the absence of other cars or streetlights. But as the minutes ticked by, the solitude began to press against me. I couldn't shake it, the unnerving realization that I was utterly alone, miles away from another soul. Alone, but not necessarily safe. Up ahead, wisps of fog began to crawl across the asphalt. Strange, I thought. The weather had been clear all day. Still, I pushed on, not eager to stop until my bedroom was in sight. The first sign of trouble was subtle, harmless even. The radio crackled before the station shifted ever so slightly, a thin hint of static interrupting the music. Annoyed, I twisted the knob to tune it back. That's when I heard it. Whispers, faint but deliberate, mingling with the noise. I froze for a second, the breath catching in my throat, before turning the radio off entirely. Probably interference, I muttered to myself, needing to hear my own voice to stay grounded. Then came the fog, thicker now. It rolled in like an ocean, swallowing the headlights and making the road near impossible to see. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Miles of nothing but dense whites surrounded me. I stayed calm, told myself to focus. But as the minutes dragged on, the hum of the car engine seemed to grow louder, sharper against the suffocating silence. Just as I thought the fog might ease, another problem emerged. In the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Relief washed over me. Another car, finally, someone else on this desolate road. But that comfort faded fast when the headlights sped closer, way too close. I squinted back, hoping they would pass me. Instead, they stayed parked behind me, tailgating. Who does that on an empty road? I hissed, both confused and annoyed. I pressed on the gas, eager to put some distance between us. But no matter how fast I went, the car behind kept pace. Their beams felt overwhelming, flooding my own car with light. Shadows darted and twisted across the dashboard, a dancing trick of the headlights and my fraying nerves. Right when I felt like screaming, it happened. The lights dissolved into nothing. 1 second they were there, burning against my rearview mirror, the next, total darkness. I blinked. Had they turned off their headlights? Pulled over. None of it made sense. My fingers hovered over my phone, wanting to call someone, anyone, if reception would allow it. But as my signal bars flickered out of existence, I was left more isolated than ever. And then I saw it. A figure, no more than an outline in the dim fog, standing defiantly in the middle of my lane. I barely had time to swerve. The figure loomed rapidly, and sheer panic hit me like a tidal wave. My tires screeched against the pavement, adrenaline flooding my system. The wheels spun in my hands as I fought to keep control. But I lost. With a jarring thud, I veered off the road, the crunch of gravel roaring underneath until the car jolted to a stop on the shoulder. My heart pounded in my throat. I scanned the road frantically. The figure was gone. No signs of anyone, no movement in the fog, nothing but the faint glow of my own hazard lights reflecting into the nothingness. I tried to start the car, no response. My palms were slick as I turned the key again and again, hoping for any sign of life. Instead, the car sat there as dead as the road around me. Panic bubbled just beneath the surface. My first instinct was to grab my phone, but of course it was useless. Even the battery flickered ominously toward empty. That's when I really felt it. I was utterly alone. The night stretched endlessly around me, quiet, still, and alive with tension. A rustle from outside made me whip my head toward the passenger side window. Darkness stared back. Minutes passed like hours. Just as I felt my pulse slowing, trying to convince myself I was safe, sound reached my ears. Soft, distant, unmistakable. Footsteps. I held my breath, straining to listen. They sounded heavy, deliberate, and close. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to look. My left hand crept toward the lock button as my eyes darted around. There was no one to see out there, yet the footsteps drew nearer. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel in sheer panic, wishing I could disappear. I don't know how long it had been when I finally snapped my head up. Cold sweat pooled along my hairline as I stared, silently praying there would be no one there. The driver encounters eerie whispers, mysterious headlights, and a ghostly figure, ultimately forcing them to confront the creeping isolation and fear of the unknown. A shape stood just inches from the passenger side window. I gasped, instinctively recoiling to the far end of the driver's seat. It, or they, moved slowly, a face obscured by fog and shadow, though the outline of their hand pressed against the icy glass. With trembling fingers, I slammed down the lock button. My ears buzzed with my own heartbeat, so loud I barely heard the faint tapping against the glass. I must have been frozen for mere seconds, though it felt like hours. As tears burned behind my eyes, a sudden light ahead startled me back to the present. The headlights, they had returned. The same ones that had been tailgating me earlier, now parked eerily in the middle of the road ahead. This new light illuminated the fog slightly, but I saw nothing between my car and theirs. Not the figure, not a single movement. I wasn't sure whether to feel relief or terror. Help might have arrived, or my nightmare had taken a new shape. I made my decision in an instant. I couldn't stay here, couldn't sit quietly for whatever might happen next. I twisted the key one last time, and by some miracle, the engine sputtered back to life. Hope surged through me, adrenaline fueling every move. Before the car could fail again, I slammed into gear and stomped on the gas. The car jumped back onto the road, fishtailing slightly before I regained control and sped toward the headlights ahead. But as I got closer, they disappeared again. I didn't care. I just needed distance between myself and whatever haunted that lonely stretch of asphalt. The silence of the road was deafening, but all I could do was focus on staying alive long enough to get out of there. I just needed distance between myself and whatever haunted that lonely stretch of asphalt. Ahead, the fog began to clear. Relief threatened to pull me from my tunnel-visioned terror, but just then, a shadow darted across my path. It wasn't a figure, not this time, but quick and low to the ground, like an animal too fast for me to identify. My hands shook as I willed the car to keep moving, refusing to stop again for anything. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the wave of relief crashed over me. I swore I wouldn't look back at the car, wouldn't let my mind wander to what might have been in the road with me. Inside my house felt like a sanctuary, and I locked every door behind me. But the questions lingered. What had I seen out there? What was real? And what was my imagination twisting the dark into danger? Was it just my mind, playing tricks after exhaustion? Or had something supernatural followed me that night? I may never know the truth. One thing is sure, I'll never take the solitude of a night drive lightly again. So, what about you? Would you have dared to face the darkness, or would you have stayed put, hoping daylight would bring safety? I turned out the lights, but as I lay in bed, I couldn't escape one final thought. The road always looks different when you're driving at night, and sometimes it just might not be yours alone.